Good morning and welcome to today's webcast, Retail Industry Outlook, Trends and Strategies for 2019. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us. We're pleased to present another in our ongoing series of continuing professional education webcasts to help companies and individuals conquer challenges as they plan for what's next. Our presentation will start in a few moments. Before we begin, here are a few things to keep in mind. You can customize how you both view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can also adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons, each relating to a different aspect of our session. You can download the group attendance sheet and a PDF copy of today's slides from the slide deck and handouts widget to the right of the slide view. You can ask our presenter questions during the webcast by typing a question in the Q&A window below the slide view and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions during the presentation or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty during today's presentation, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session will offer you 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the requirements as specified by the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% of the polling questions, which we'll ask throughout today's presentation. To respond to a poll, click the button next to your answer. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget to open a PDF file that you can save to your computer. Don't worry if you can't download your PDF certificate today. We'll email a copy to you in 2 weeks. If you're attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our attendance sheet to receive CPE credit. The attendance sheet is available in the slide deck and handouts widget. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. Also note that CPE credit can be awarded only to participants registered as themselves and isn't available to participants who view the on-demand version. As a reminder, the presentation you're about to see isn't legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
And I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters from Moss Adams, Frank Kaufman, Darin Goehner, and Francis Tam. And with that, Frank, I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome, everyone. There's several hundred of you on the phone. It's always fun to see the attendee list because it's certainly across the country and then different parts of the globe. So I think this is maybe our 10th or 12th loose track as far as our retail outlook, but it's always a pleasure to get to share some of the insights that we have. The presentation today is basically broken up along the lines of this table of contents, and I'll deal with the state of retail, and Darin will deal with the customer connection, and Francis will handle the technology drivers. So I'll just pause a minute for you to take a look at the table of contents. There's what I would say some of the expected topics and probably a couple of interesting new things there to chat about. All right, so here we go. Some of the incredible stats that I love to look at and just think about how big our market is that we play in. And you hear a lot of different things. Certainly, we'll talk a little bit about the turbulent times that are going on, but the 2018 GDP grew by 2.9%, which was the largest since, let's say, the 2007-8 recession timeframe. So that hopefully will be seen as some good news, as are some of these other things, right? So we have interest rates, while we hear about some upticks, still very low, and also the unemployment rate is low. I think we're moving in a great direction with the tariffs. It seems to be in the last month or so. It seems that way, less turmoil than maybe a couple months before. Some of the surprising things that I heard when we were chatting, putting this thing together, which was kind of shocking and maybe plays in a little bit to the retail strategy, is actually overall, for the first time in my lifetime, the life expectancy has had 3 years of declining expectation. So we're all living longer than we thought when we were born, but in the last few years, maybe some of the connectivity is taking its toll. I'm not sure. The other kind of interesting topic that's popping up is healthcare, which we all know has been a focal point of a lot of different facets, is now actually moving its way into the retail environment. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So where are we at today? $2.6 trillion being spent in the U.S. and over 2 billion people connected worldwide online. And, it's kind of funny because we seem to talk a lot about online, and it's a bit of an antiquated term because digital is really more of the term that's more appropriate. But people just continue to say online while the bulk of the activity is actually mobile. What you see here is the introduction of a term called offline, where we're striking out bricks and mortar. And that should tell you how pervasive the digital world is, that we're no longer referring to stores or bricks and mortar. We're really referring to, is it digital, or if it's not digital, we'll call that offline, which is the new moniker for stores, physical stores. The other big things we're hearing tremendous, not just definitions of what artificial intelligence is, but really how it's being deployed. And of course, if you're in retail, you have not been able to escape the tremendous volume of sizable, very, very long-term retailers that are no longer. And when I mean no longer, a lot of them are going directly to 7 rather than Chapter 11, and we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. So some positives and some negatives. Of course, China is a dominant force in the global scene, and there are both positives and negatives going there. I think one of the huge stats that you see here is that the mobile pay trend, they're ahead of us in how they use mobile in China, and we will follow that. But it's $9 trillion being spent somewhere disconnected, somewhere on a phone. So what we're going to chat about is some of the big players, and I was going to say I can't go a day, but I can't really go a couple hours without the term Amazon popping up. They're just an incredible force. They've permeated everything. I think in addition to being on your phone as an app or using them to watch a video, certainly Alexa has taken a foothold in most households, and I think recently they bought Eero so that they can be even more connected in your home, so that they control that full channel. So if you see here, 40% of online retail sales, Amazon's dealing with. And if we look in this chart in particular, or this slide, you have on the left specific things that we're used to talking about with Amazon. Amazon Go, which is a format where you can buy and just move without any interaction with registers. There's lockers where you can make it more convenient for you to pick up product. I think as we see here, the Echo at 8 million people. One of the scariest things to me, and really is kind of surmises what's going on in the technology world, is Amazon's zero-click program. And it seems like very few people are aware of this, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time outlining it. And if you've heard about this and I'm redundant, I apologize. But here's the concept. Basically, when we're trying to make a customer experience seamless, we make it as easy as possible. So originally when people went online, you could click 8-9 times before you could get something into your shopping cart and actually get it purchased and maybe sent to your house. And there's always been pressure, and all the stats tell you the fewer the clicks, the more you can have the shopping cart convert. So we fast forward to today, and when you couple with artificial intelligence, Amazon feels that they can predict what you're going to buy and actually source it and deliver it to you in a format where you don't even have to click. So, in other words, they follow your profile, they know what you've bought, they know what you like, and they believe they know what you're going to like. And so with the logarithms, they determine what it is that you want, and they're sending product now to you. This year, you will receive product on your porch that you did not order. And it will come in a box with a return box that allows you to return it with a label, free of charge. And, when I first started talking about this, a number of people said, well, hey, they can't do that. Well, they can. Of course they can. I don't believe you're under any obligation to return the product. So maybe you say, I'm going to send it back, or maybe you say, I'm going to keep it, or maybe you say, I'm going to keep it and I'm going to pay for it. And the hope is, and the belief with all the studies they've done, is there will be so much of an uptick in the convenience factor for you, and they know you so well, they're going to make it's so convenient to you that, yes, you're going to buy. And they're going to convert us just like going from the old days of writing a check to a debit card to wire transfers to doing everything online. This is the new step. This is the new stage, and people that I've chatted with have run the gamut from this is intrusive and Big Brother to, wow, they're really looking out for me. And I think they'll be able to demonstrate that in some cases they know us better than we know themselves. So it's an interesting step, certainly a paradigm shift. So that's one big thing. The other big thing that we're seeing with Amazon is their web services. So a totally separate platform for them to help do commerce. And for any of you that are on this program, you know what I'm talking about, but they're finding other ways to serve their customers. So they've become so pervasive that the big question that's starting to pop up is this. Is Amazon a monopoly? Are they in too powerful of a position? What is going to happen? Most of us have their app. Most of us buy product from them. But they do make it difficult to compete with. So there's a little bit of a groundswelling now that there's going to be pressure put on Amazon to start maybe divesting. And speculation talks about this. If you look at this page, this is where you draw the line in the middle, and Amazon Web Services could become separated. So this is a little bit controversial of a topic, but it's our job to tell you where we think things are going, so there's some exposure there. So with that, what we'd like to do is get some feedback from you about exactly how you're connected with Amazon. So Emily, if you can help us with the polling question.
Yep. Our first polling question, how does your company leverage Amazon to sell products? And your options are A, sell directly on Amazon, B, fulfillment by Amazon, C, Amazon Web Services user, D, all of the above, E, we don't interact with Amazon currently but would like to in the future, or F, we don't interact with Amazon currently and don't intend to in the future. I'll give everyone a few moments to respond. To participate in our polls today, please click the button next to the answer you choose and hit submit. And we'll close it down in 3, 2, 1, and here are the results.
All righty. Yeah, so very, very interesting. I was excited to put this out there to see what the reaction would be, and so it's spread quite a bit. So we have people that are in each bucket, and then it's very interesting on lines E and F. So I think that's maybe where I'll focus, which is the topic that I was talking about earlier. There's a large love relationship with Amazon, and there is a groundswelling of hate relationship from a standpoint of, they're very hard to compete with, or they're challenging with my brands, or they're competing with me at a level that I can't compete. So I'm not sure where each party fits as we sit here, but it is across the board, and I think that's why we're talking about there'll be some upheaval. If the fact was that we don't interact with Amazon, and we currently don't intend to, was below 5%, I would say there's no reason for thinking that some kind of shakeup would happen, but this is a pretty big number, and probably would have been interesting to do it last year and this year and next year to see the trend. So we'll probably ask this again, see which direction it's heading.
So, Frank, this is Francis. I'll chime in. From an IT perspective, as an IT person, Amazon really changed our world, especially AWS. Now they really kind of blur the line. Are they really a retail company or technology company? They changed the landscape quite a bit. Basically, one thing that we have been using a lot in the past where, IT people, they would put a rack or a blade, a server in a co-location, what we call co-location, and run it from there. Now with AWS, they basically rendered that business almost obsolete. I think in a few more years, you won't even hear anybody running a co-location business anymore. Everybody is going to virtualize their IT stuff in the AWS environment. And there are a lot of benefits to it, as you can imagine, from an IT perspective: scalability, latency, optimization, redundancy, all that is built in. Companies, CEOs, CFOs, and CIOs, no longer they have to worry about updating, patching. Is this going to be scalable when I grow my business? So I think that's the beauty and flexibility that AWS can offer retail business in that sense. Back to you.
Thank you, Francis. Appreciate that insight. And by the way, as we're going through, there's opportunities for you to ask questions. Just please submit them, and we'll respond at the end. So, we just talked about Amazon and their dominance, and take a look at some of the stats here for Alibaba. Okay, so they have not really become a huge force in the U.S., but certainly in China, their share of e-commerce, where I said was Amazon was 40%, Alibaba in China is close to 60%. So, and the volume of dollars and things of that nature, and they are a little bit, I'll say, I don't know if more diverse is the right term, but they certainly have a function of all of these: FedEx, Google, PayPal, eBay. They're quite encompassing in how they reach their market. You can see, much like Amazon, they've moved into the grocery store arena and making sure that product you can order and have your food cooked and delivered there, much like the combination of, let's say, Uber Eats, but this is all under the one umbrella. So, and what they're talking about really is this new retail concept that we'll get to some of the definitions at the end here. but it is just, I'll say, omni-channel at the nth level. We move forward to some of the bigger players that are here. From a standpoint of bricks and mortar primarily, right? At least how they've grown up. Target has done quite a bit to revamp their stores to make the shopping experience much different. Obviously you can do self-checkout, which makes it easy. They have more face-to-face, I'll call store associates, interacting to help. But they also are focusing on making your purchase easy, whether it's buy online and pick up in store, using their ship technology. So again, a complete blending, and I'll call it of online and offline. Walmart is still very, very, very dominant, and I think the first stat is the telling stat. 10 miles, let's call it 10 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes. Anybody could be in a Walmart store in 10 or 15 minutes. They are looking and have acquired technology-based platforms to help them deliver and make this step. The thing that we talk about here, and we'll address a little bit later, is trying to become digitally native. So there's just two basic mindsets that are different. If you've done bricks and mortar, and then to try to communicate online, or if you've what we're seeing a lot more of these days is online or digital, growing to a level and then finding, in some cases, cost of customer acquisition is actually cheaper at the store level, but if they move in that direction, they have to have sort of a different merchandising attitude. The product and the price has to be consistent, but how you present it to the customer is much different. And Walmart is investing there. They are also investing in the same kind of thing where you will see spots where you can pick things up and order and just drive in. You have your little spot right by the door. They'll run it out to you. It's very, very convenient. So let's address a little bit now what we're going to start calling offline. Hopefully everybody joins with us and starts calling it offline. Because, by the way, I don't even know if there is such a physical store that was made out of bricks and mortar that's still standing. But let's go with offline. So as much as we're focusing on the digital, it's really the digital communication that is involved in 90% of the transactions. But the actual dollars, where the dollars change hands, still are 90% in the store. So it is why are people going to the store? They still like to get the selection. They still like to touch things. And the H2H factor, which is another one of these new terms that we're hearing popping up. Human connection is becoming, I'll call it, more unique than electronic connection. And if you look at the different groups, and I know Darin will talk specifically later about the sort of the buckets of the consumers, you will see that it's unique to be actually face-to-face with an individual. So we're seeing some wins in the offline world. And so what are we trying to do? We're still trying to get people in our stores, but we're trying to find ways that sort of bridge the gap between old school, hi, I'm a Walmart greeter, and literally having a robot talk to you in the store, which is what Lowe's is doing. And you go into McDonald's and you can order your food. It's actually sometimes harder to order your food from a person they kind of direct you, well, you know what, we have less people here, can you use the kiosk? So some of the implementation steps that are happening aren't the best. I was recently in the Levi store in New York, and they have taken things to a little bit different level with their sales associates, where all of them have, I'll call it a wristband that has a small data tool on it that will, if you want, first of all, if you tell them your name, and you have been a customer of theirs, they instantly have on their arm everything that you've bought in the last 18 months. They know your size. They know what credit card you use. They know about your loyalty program. And then also what they have in there is the full inventory of product in the store by location. So if you say, hey, I'm looking for this and I don't see it, they can instantly know, for example, if it's in backstock and if it's in your size. And if it's not in your size or not in backstock, what's the closest location that they can get it and when they can deliver it to your house. So a lot of the digital is in the store, but it's nice to have the customer and the associate have this kind of interaction. And then literally they're booking appointments for you to come in with your friendly neighborhood associate that you like and make the experience better. I won't go into much of Museum of Ice Cream. It's a different concept. I think people like it. There's this thing called the Fluid Project, which is an interesting I'll call it new concept, in that the store, they refer to themselves as a non-binary store, meaning not male or female. And you'll hear Darin talk a lot about this category. But this is a store that's their leading mantra, is that come to our store and anybody can wear any product in our store. So I did mention, we can't just have any real conversation about retail these days without talking about the challenges that some of the larger organizations that we've known for years are going through and trying to transition. And I think everybody's very well aware of Sears, but there's nearly 100,000 employees in 700 stores. Look at the Toys R Us number with $5 billion in debt. And look at basically the household names that are listed that were big 2018 filings. And then you have recently Charlotte Russe, Payless, and Shopko file. And what's happened is some of this is because of acquisitions and extensive debt. Some of it is just because they haven't transitioned. When Amazon gets, let's just call it 4% of total retail, if you've got 40% of 10%, that's a big bite that's coming out. And if you haven't followed, there's really, 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 really difficult waters ahead. The things that I see differently now than what I've seen historically with the people that are filing, they're filing Chapter 7, meaning Payless shoe stores, 2,000 stores going from in business to out of business in, let's say, 90 days. Not, I've got 500 bad stores and I have 1,500 good stores. It's the model is broken. So for those of you on the phone, I cannot emphasize enough that the balance has to be there. And whilst dollars are still being spent in the stores, the majority of it, if you don't have the overall connection that Darin will talk about, you're not long for the world. So talk a little bit about some of the things where we see where people are actually winning, right? So or maybe a thought, right? So if you literally walk into one of your locations, okay, and you don't look at it from, what you know about your business, but totally fresh. Is it convenient? Is it I'll call it a happy place to be? Do we see smiles on people's faces? Do we see things that are entertaining? Most of the retail landlords these days are looking to attract to their locations, whether it's a strip center or a mall. You got to be driving some people here. Give me a Top Golf. Give me a gym. Give me 2 more restaurants to get people here in. So it's all about finding a way to make the customer happy and enjoy their experience. A big part of it is spending additional time training the associates to make sure that they really are connecting. I walked into a restaurant the other night and stood at the reception area waiting for the host or hostess to seat us, and it was only 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm standing there with nobody, just standing, and then 3 of them came out of the back room, and it's like, okay, well, if you think as you're managing your stores, because you have multiple people there so that at no point will nobody be standing and waiting at the front, well, just by having those people on doesn't mean they're actually doing it. So you have to ensure that the quality you're delivering is key, right? And again, put the customer at the center. Okay, so at this point, I'll turn it over to Darin, and you can talk more about focusing on the customer.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. I'm going to take a few minutes and just kind of categorize the types of customers you may interact with. And as Frank said earlier, some of the newer concepts that are coming out are non-binary, and you'll hear me use the word inclusive several times in this presentation. So just keep that in mind as we talk about. We'll segment each group, but really it's a matter of understanding how do we include all of the groups that we're going to go through. So we'll start off talking about the millennials. We always do. They got about a $600 billion spending power. The things that are important that we found or we've heard from millennials is they want quality, they want ease of shopping, and they want convenience. And one of the more interesting things is that convenience actually trumps security concerns. Francis will talk about that a little bit later in his section, but it's fascinating that they will sacrifice convenience for or security for convenience. Millennials are much more comfortable at the self-service checkout. They're independent. They can do it themselves. They understand how technology works. 80% of millennials participate in loyalty programs. And the key there is that the brands must have an identity and be transparent and socially conscious. But they will, again, give their information for some kind of discount, for some kind of sense of belonging. And then the last thing that we found with millennials is they're open to new options. They don't like credit card debt, but they'll do Afterpay, where they can buy the item now and in 4 installments can pay that off. And millennials like options. Frank talked about Target earlier. One of Target's latest successes is the omni-channel, where customers have 7 different ways to shop, which include, click and connect and same-day delivery. So I think with the 7 different ways to shop, Target's definitely aiming at millennials and groups much like them. Francis, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting group. So from a technology perspective, that's a very unique group in a way that it may drive your maybe spending dollars in marketing and your technology and whatnot. A lot of the time these days, a lot of these millennials, when they buy things, they are going to rely on reviews, ratings, and feedback in social media, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. And this is where I think, comparing to the old days, your marketing dollars maybe have to spend a lot more on these social media to drive them to your market, to your store. Credit card and cash probably will become less and less used, like you pointed out, Darin. With all the proliferation of Google Wallet, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, and, the near-field connectivity chip on your credit card, these millennials is almost like if you're not using these technology, you're outdated. They are not going to be highly regarded by their peers. So in that sense, I think this is where you have to also consider, well, it's not only convenience, but it is a quote-unquote in thing for the millennial group. So that's very interesting group, millennials. Back to you.
Thanks, Francis. Let's talk a little bit about personalization. And in the past, we've talked about personalization and understanding your customer. It's almost taken to a whole nother level now where customers want you to use their own name, right? They want to be identified. They want to know that they're important. I've got a client who does a lot in the outdoor space, and if you post something on Instagram with their Twitter handle, they will repost it on their Instagram. And there's something about seeing yourself in their product on Instagram that adds this gratification. It makes you feel important and identified. And so I think the more you can help customers feel important and identified where they're at, hopefully it's using your product, your brands, or brands you're selling, the better. I think data science is driving the personalization. How are we mining information for geography and body type and previous purchases, et cetera, et cetera. One of the key things about getting that information is where are you getting that information? And we'll ask you a polling question in a couple slides about where are you getting the important information that it's going to take to personalize and connect with the customer on their level. Are you getting it from loyalty programs, point of sale, surveys, et cetera? One interesting way to think about a shift in focus is shifting from an inventory of products that you're selling to an inventory of customers. What do our customers look like? How do we mine them to purchase more, to be more connected to us versus what kind of products can we push to them or what's our inventory of products? It's more, are we drawing the customer in and then being able to provide what they need? And then the big thing now is just looking at the growing markets. We'll talk a little bit about non-binary and LGBTQ. We'll also talk a little bit about males and females and how they're different. So with that, I'll flip to the next slide, which is talk about the non-binary customer, which is exactly what Frank was talking about earlier. They don't identify as male or female. And you look at the Fluid Project, which is the world's first, gender agnostic store, and why are they successful? Their key values are clear. It's about acceptance, it's about balance, integrity, intention, and openness. And so when you look at those, that connects with people. That connects with the heterosexual. I mean, most of their customers are heterosexual. So this is not only identifying with people that are across races and everything else. This is really a matter of buying into what are the core values, and they're winning by pushing those values: acceptance, balance, integrity, intention, and openness. So now that we've talked a little bit about non-binary customers, there's still people probably on this phone that are interested in how genders think traditionally. So let's start with what we found, the statistics of women shopping. You can see them there. 85% of purchases are made by female shoppers. Price is the influencer, and 89% are still focused on something going on sale, getting some kind of bargain. And we'll talk a little bit here about, we all know that men and women are generally different. It's the how we are different that matters when we're selling them product or we're trying to connect with them. A couple of the key points here, you can see them all listed, but I'll just focus on a couple of them. For men, shopping, it's a necessity. And for women, it's an experience. And so you can see a lot of online shoppers are men, a lot of digital shoppers are men, transaction related, get it done, get the necessity done. You still see a lot of women, for the most part, are the ones participating in purchases in store or offline. The other one that's interesting here is men asking for directions is a weakness. I don't know if anyone's ever been in a car with a man, but we don't tend to ask for directions. You know what's interesting, though, is Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze are game changers in the mentality of how we do things, because men have no problem punching directions in and listening to those. And so the question is, if we've got it to be acceptable to have a phone give you play-by-play directions, how do we convert that into shopping? How do we get the males to feel like, hey, we're giving them these hints or these ways of winning or getting to some place where you're not being told what to do? So I think that is kind of a hidden gem as far as how can we engage the male in just not shopping for necessity, but shopping for an experience and making it a winning experience. And then I'll talk a little bit here about LGBTQ. That actually is the fourth largest GDP in the world if it were a country. The consumer buying power was over $917 billion in 2018. Generally, LGBTQ focus on brand authenticity. And above all, they want inclusivity, right? Inclusive seems to be the word of the year. How can we be inclusive of non-binary, LGBTQ, males, females, everybody, and yet also connect with them on a level that's personal to them? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily for our second polling question.
All right, our second polling question, how do you gather information from your customers? And your options are A, associates, B, loyalty programs, C, general demographics of shopper and region, or D, product sales. And as a reminder, if you would like to receive CPE credit for today's webcast, you will need to respond to at least 3 of the 4 polling questions. We're on our second question, so we'll have 2 more coming up. Give everybody a few more seconds. And let's go ahead and take a look at the results. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Interesting results that the product sales is by far the leader, and loyalty programs are as low as they are. It seems that the trend is to continue to mine the information in the loyalty programs to gather how frequently is someone buying, how frequently are they checking online even, how frequently are they coming into the store versus buying, and then what's the conversion rates once I have them there. So interesting results, and I think this, like Frank's slide, will probably change over the years. We're running a little bit behind, so I'm going to just talk really quick about the connected associates for some on the phone with offline brick and mortar. This might be important, and the key things here is to understand we have new generations that are actually entering the workforce. Generation Z and Millennials are actually entering management, let alone what I talked about before with LGBTQ, non-binaries. Again, trying to find what's the correct associate that's going to connect with your customers. That's the key, is how are they going to connect with the customers. These new generations are raised on technology. They want real-time tools to be able to guide what's going on. Frank referred to it earlier at Levi's, with them having access to what's in inventory, what's not, and how to quickly provide a solution to the customers. And then, above all, human-to-human contact, as Frank said, is still essential. Consumers spend 64% more on products when they've had human-to-human interaction, so it's less of a transaction. So obviously there's a premium and an add-on to the brick-and-mortar have advantage of that offline or that online does not. We'll talk really quick as we talk about online and we talk about returns. Returns are are what they are. It's part of the process. As Frank talked about earlier, a successful omni-channel, or one of the slides was a successful omni-channel includes walking the customer's shoes. And so how are we making our lives or the customers' lives easy to return without creating issues of inventory management for ourselves? And one of the most interesting returns strategies is the fact that Kohl's will take any Amazon product as a return. So if you bought it on Amazon, you didn't want it, you return it to a Kohl's store, and Kohl's returns it to Amazon and takes care of it at a brick and mortar location. So fascinating that we have retailers teaming up to offer in-store returns of another retailer's purchases. I'm going to shift gears. This really isn't customer connection, but we are an accounting firm, so it wouldn't be a seminar, a presentation without a blatant plug for something related to tax and something related to accounting. Most of you on the phone hopefully know about South Dakota versus Wayfair. What this was a ruling in June 2018 by the Supreme Court that ruled in the favor of South Dakota, which said if you do not have a physical presence in the state, but you sell over $100,000 in transactions, or you have over 200 transactions, you have a sales tax requirement, both to withhold and then to remit to the state for any sales into that state. Since June of 2018, 34 states have adopted some kind of Wayfair standard, which typically is $100,000 in sales or 200 transactions. Here's the key. This is your responsibility as a retailer, and if you don't collect it, it's going to cost, whether the state comes after you or you go through a transaction in due diligence, or you have to disclose it on your financial statements if you're a publicly traded company, if the liability gets material enough. The problem is this is now your liability. If we had simply collected it when the purchase was made, the customer pays it, we collect it, we remit it to the state, not our responsibility. And so I also don't believe that customers are really swayed by having sales tax exempt products anymore. That's not a competitive advantage. So I would encourage anyone who's on this call who's not actively looking at their sales tax nexus footprint to contact us. We would love to talk to you about it. My contact information is there. What we do is we like to partner with great companies out there like Avalara, who will help with their technology that implements right with your software, that will help you collect, remit that sales tax. And there's a little administrative fee to it, but it's far less than the foregone sales tax that you would have had to pay. And the one other thing I would say that's not on this slide, but earlier there were several of you that are shipping FBA Amazon, about 25% of you who responded, actually, 14% who said we ship FBA, and 11% that said all of the above. And just be aware that shipping FBA means you have inventory in whatever state that Amazon wants to stick your inventory in their distribution centers. And that creates not only a sales tax issue, but a state income tax issue. So, again, if you're selling FBA, you should be having conversations with your CPA or Moss Adams and addressing those issues. And I'll turn the next slide over to Frank to talk about lease accounting standards. Or maybe I won't. Frank, are you on mute?
Hello. Is everybody there? Can you hear me now? I hope so. Okay. Anyhow, the lease standard, we've been talking about this for years, but it is effective for public company effective this year, for non-publics next year. Real quick way of saying it is historically, leases that you sign for all of your locations, certainly the offline business has a huge exposure, but even if you just have a warehouse, that lease currently is very likely not on your balance sheet. If you're public, starting January 1 this year, it needs to be. And if you are a private company, starting January 1 next year, it will have to be. What does that mean? Most likely, if you have debt covenants, they blow up. So there's a way of doing it appropriately and communicating, especially with your bankers and working with other options as far as debt covenants. So for those of you, and I know there are some on the phone because I know in the general population there's a pretty significant percentage that said, I'll deal with that later. Later is here, and I'll just say it's very impactful. And as Darin said, we're here to help. So you have our contact info. I'm not going to belabor the point, but please put it up on the top of your priority list. And with that, I think we're going to ask where you guys stand on this topic.
All right. Our third polling question. How prepared are you to comply with the lease accounting standards? A, totally prepared, B, somewhat prepared, or C, not prepared. And for those of you that would like a copy of today's slide deck, you can download that now from the folder that says slide deck and handouts to the right of the slide view. We'll also be sending the slides via email after the webcast. We'll give everyone a few more seconds here. And let's go ahead and take a look at the results. Back to you.
Okay, so real quickly, 80% of you are not totally prepared. Please call, reach out to whoever you trust in this area. We're here as well. Long story short, the standard is 600 pages. If you go on our website, we boiled it down to 40 pages. And if you want easier, just pick up the phone and call. All right, I think, Francis, your turn.
Well, thanks, Frank. So I have about 8 minutes to talk about all the technology trends in retail. So I'm not going to shock you because a lot of these things probably you have heard about them and seen them in the news and maybe actually experienced a lot of them in real life already. So in the technology world, in the retail sector, data is everything. Everybody's talking about how we can get the data faster, more updated, in more real-time basis. So data, as you can imagine, it greatly enhances the customer experience. And all the data, all the people that customers, suppliers, merchants, they all want the data to be real-time, easily accessible, and instantly actionable. So I think it's going to be the continuing trend in the next 5-10 years. Everybody wants the data to be coming in faster and faster and faster. As you can imagine, the benefits of these things are very great, but based on these trends as customer metrics, AI, daily flash sales reporting, 5G networks, inventory awareness, all these things we are kind of tracking right now. But the benefits is, you can identify these trends. If you can identify these trends as early as you can, that will help you to predict your inventory forecasting, better assortment of products, optimizing supply chain and fulfillment. So those are obvious. And then on the flip side of it, if you're preparing for this technology, hopefully you will look at the industry or, acquiring all these skills in advance and build a team that you need to address these needs. And start with small projects, maybe create some early successes, and then develop a multi-year plan, what you want to achieve in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, so that you can gradually phase in this kind of technology. Emily, polling question number 4.
All right, our last polling question. In 2019, in what of the following areas will you invest? A, brick and mortar, B, e-commerce, C, AI or analytics, D, associates. And once you have completed all CPE requirements for today, you will be able to download a PDF of your CPE certificate from the CPE progress widget to the right of the slide view. And let's go ahead and see what everybody has to say. Francis, back to you.
Great. So I think this is very obvious. A lot of folks are looking into more and more e-commerce. The brick and mortar, I guess we call it now, offline stores are probably fading away comparing to 10 or 20 years ago. AI is up and coming, so that's pretty obvious. And as also the only thing that I'm not surprised to see is people are not ready to spend more money on associates, 13%. So that's good information. There's no right or wrong. It's just this is a good survey. Moving on to the next slide, AI, artificial intelligence. I'm not going to read it line by line just for the sake of time. We have a few more slides to go, but AI in a nutshell, for those people who kind of fuzzy, what really AI is. In the old days, you can only program one thing at a time, one software, one program, one module at a time. What AI is, basically, you have other programs to program the programs underneath it. In other words, you don't have human beings to program these already. You're going to have programs or robots or whatever to program other robots or programs. As you can imagine, the time needed to update these programs will be much shorter when you have machines programming machines. So that's what we're talking about. When you have machine programming machines, that will be even faster. So the algorithm, how many exponentially you can do, will predict how fast we can generate the information, update the information. So, if you look at these 5 bullets, AI is going to generate probably over 29 trillion in business value and recover 6.2 billion of hours of work by 2021. And I think those numbers could be even underestimated. It's how we rely on AI in various areas, not only in retail, but that will be the trend. Next one is on robots. So again, it's very similar to what I talked about AI. Robots is going to replace a lot of the mechanical work that human beings are doing right now. They are going to be used in retail a lot in stacking shelves and whatnot. Robotics isn't going to not going to replacing people, but rather assisting them. So you still need a lot of human intelligence, how the robots are going to behave, how they're going to help out in the heavy lifting in the retail industry. The future bot functionality would be platform for information transfer, RFID, data capture, camera analytics, planogram compliance. So as you can imagine, probably robots will be able to get to places much faster, easier. They don't have to sleep. They can probably walk the floor 24 hours by 7 and then give you the most up-to-date information about, where the goods are, capturing different kind of data, updating the planogram and all the stuff. So this is a very big area too. Next one is drones. Drones, we heard about that all the time these days, how drones are being used to take pictures and all the stuff. Again, this could be even more widely used in the retail industry. So we talk about how robots can be used in the warehouse and the stores. Now drones, how can we get the goods faster even to the customers? Do we even have to use FedEx? Do we even have to use a truck to do it? Maybe one day we don't even see those trucks anymore. The drones can actually play a bigger role, and they can do food delivery, medical deliveries, capturing data, and then, security would be obviously a good thing because you don't have human beings involved anymore. And then, of course, the drones will be able to capture the consumer behavior much faster and summarize it even faster than human beings and upload it to, the servers in a real-time basis. Autonomous vehicles, that's another application of technology these days. So you might have heard of Amazon, Kroger, Walmart already deploying some form of autonomous vehicles. 46 companies are already currently deploying some form of AV technology. In Washington, Amazon already launched a Scout, an AV that is designed to deliver packages to customers using autonomous delivery vehicles. These devices are about the size of a small cooler, and then they will being shipped along the sidewalks. Kroger is working with Neural on a pilot in Arizona. Walmart is deploying 2 autonomous vehicle trials to pilot the home delivery use as well. So as you can imagine, there's always 2 sides of looking at things. As Darin talked about, when you have convenience, you may have an issue with security. So the 2 biggest obstacles of AV deployment is there's not really any regulatory clarity about many things. What happens if there's an accident? Who is going to be blamed for it? Well, what's any kind of framework they have to operate within? And what about customer adoption? What are the rules and all the stuff? So those are the things I think, is only going to come with a new generation of technology being deployed. Okay. The next platform is voice assistant. So I think this is already here, not very in the far future, because we have used, I don't know, a lot of homes are using Alexa already, Amazon Alexa, and 32% of the customers have already a voice-activated device like Echo Dot, Google Home. I have one at home, and my son ordered a book that I didn't even know yesterday, so that's good. Makes my work a little bit easier, right? And then 40% of the consumers that are using these devices, they will be using these devices to purchase more. 75% of buyers are interested in receiving voice activation or voice assistance in store. When you walk in, maybe there's a robot that tells, hey, how can I help you? So those are more and more welcome in different stores. Voice assistants definitely allow multitasking when driving, cooking, and working. In other words, you will be able to make buying decisions quicker and do more buying while you're doing other things. That's scary. All right, next one, visual. So this is what we call last year, visual analytics. So Amazon has a machine learning power visual shopping, and I'm not going to read through every single slide. So as you can see, every big company now has almost like an initiative in the visual technology. Everybody's trying to get people to make more decisions quicker by giving you the analysis you need. Rather than you do it, they will give it to you right away. You give them a picture, they will give it to you. All right. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Frank.
Thank you, Francis. Just the one comment on visual as it related to the polling question earlier. I think people said they were going to look at product sales to get information from about their customers and thoughts going forward. And if you think online, about stuff that's left in the shopping cart that's not purchased, and you try to do a lot of research to find out, well, how come we didn't close that? How can we do it next time? In the offline world now, you see more and more use of cameras watching customers, not about, hey, did they take our product, but they looked at something and they put it back, and trying to dissect that information through AI to determine how to get that sale. So it's not just the sale that occurred, but the one that you missed, how to recapture that, and visuals helping with that. And then real quickly, because we're real tight on time, but there were some questions, so I'm just going to take the first one, which had to do with customer acquisition costs, and compare online to the offline world. And I'll throw one stat, and it's a stat, but when Drew Green, who founded Indochino, which was a virtual digital marketplace, and then they moved towards having some offline locations, what they found in their world was there was $150 per customer acquisition cost online and only $80 offline. And so they were very surprised and pleased about that. You can't take that in a vacuum, but because obviously if they didn't have the online presence, maybe just the offline by itself would have been much more. But anyhow, those are kinds of things that we love to discuss with the companies that are out there in the retail world. So reach out to us. And thank you for attending. Emily, I'll let you wrap it up.
All right. Thank you, Frank. And thanks, Darin and Francis, for a great presentation today. If you had a question for our presenters that we didn't have time for, you may still reach out to them through the speaker bio widget. As a reminder, if you attended today's presentation in a group and would like to receive CPE credit, you must complete the group attendance sheet found in the slide deck and handouts icon to the right of the slide view. If you participated as an individual and met all CPE certification requirements, your certificate is available to download now in the CPE progress window to the right of the slide view. I'll keep the webcast console open for a few minutes to give you time to download. A copy of your CPE certificate will be emailed within 2 weeks should you have any difficulty downloading it now. Here is a link to an online survey where you can provide feedback for today's presentation. Please take a moment to complete this survey as your feedback is very important to us. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next time.